Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new episode of Transformers More Lore. I'm just going to casually do a More Lore episode as if there hasn't been a 2-year gap between this one and the last one. You know what? No, this is a new season of More Lore, I guess, because the new Transformers Lore series is considered Season 2. If you don't know, Transformers More Lore is where I take your questions in the comments that you have about the lore of Transformers and the related franchises. It's sort of almost a Q&A series I do specifically for Transformers lore as a companion series. Although, the more I think about it, the more I realize doing short little videos individually answering each question would probably help people who want to know the answers to these questions better so they can see it when the video's out, and also I can benefit more from that. But you know what? I just hit the microphone button, we're gonna go through with this. Now, because there hasn't been a Transformers More Lore video in about 2 years, we don't really have a video to find questions, the most recent questions asked, so I went through my comment section and went the past month or so to find comments that could work as questions for Transformers More Lore. The first one, commented by Dirty Dan on the This Terrible Transformers News Article Was a Year Late video. To be fair, Bay retcons the franchise every movie, so it's hard to even keep track anymore. Now, this isn't a question, but it is. It does require more clarification, more correction. So we're gonna change that into the question: does Bay retcon the Transformers film franchise every movie? And the answer is no, depending on how you define retcon. If by retcon you define it as contradicting information, new information that contradicts older information, and now from that point on that older information never happened, that doesn't happen with the film, the first movie universe, especially when you count all the IDW and extra material that really helped the movie universe flow into one solid universe. So the timeline for the first movie universe doesn't retcon itself. Now, there's varying degrees of what is and isn't a retcon. I'm planning on making a video on this at some point, but if you include any going back to the past and revealing new information as a retcon, then sure. But then every story has retcons, and when I hear retcon, I think of a negative connotation, as in it contradicts previous continuity, and from that point on, it overwrites it. That does not happen in the movie timeline. Caleb Porter on the Transformers Lore Aligned Continuity timeline. I'm 5 months late, but I'm confused. I thought the Aligned Continuity came to a bookend after they stopped the new Cybertronian Council from blacklisting Autobots. What am I missing? You are missing primarily Rescue Bots Academy, which is a continuation of the original Rescue Bots cartoon and therefore still takes place in the Aligned Continuity. The Aligned Continuity isn't dead yet, but it's definitely a shadow of its former self. And I think it's interesting to note that right now, on television, we have 2 different Transformer continuities on TV. 2 different continuities, 2 different universes. You have the Cyberverse universe, the Cyberverse timeline, and you have the Aligned continuity still going. I think it's very interesting. I'm not sure if we've ever had a situation where 2 concurrent Transformers series were happening that were in 2 completely different timelines. On my IDW Continuity Impossible ? Which is a really, really old and really outdated video, DeathCheat666 says IDW is one of the worst event comics I've ever read. I just want to point out, IDW isn't an event comic. IDW is a comic publisher. Charisma Clayton on the Transformers Lore IDW G1 Part 2 Chaos Theory video, which, by the way, Chaos Theory and Megatron Origin keep getting a lot of views, and I don't know why. Why it just doesn't stop. It's like they're monsters that continue to grow out of control. But Clayton says, the Transformers have religion? If so, what do they think primes are gods or something? Well, they don't really think of primes as gods, depending on how you define God. There are some Transformer religions that venerate the primes as some sort of spiritual figure. Often, any sort of veneration of primes is a subset of a religion that supports Primus. Now, this gets weird when we go into pre- and post-Shroud Transformers lore, Pre-Shroud, pretty much the correct religion was the Primus religion, the Primus Creationism religion for most of the multiverse. That Primus was the creator, and Primus is venerated or worshipped as a god throughout most of the pre-Shroud Transformers continuities. Other less fleshed out religions pop up every now and again. Most notably, IDW had a few. The first IDW universe had a few non-Primus-based religions. And I want to make clear that there's Unicron worship, there's worship of the Matrix in particular, there's venerations of the Primes. All of those are subsets of what is ultimately the Primus religion that was a real thing. It wasn't like just a religion that they followed, but the actual reality for this most of the multiverse before the Shroud. And sometimes religious texts would show up, like the Covenant of Primus or the Primal Prophecies, stuff like that. In IDW, the Guiding Hand, which is still part of the Primus creation myth, often has a role to play in different sub-religions, again, that all feeds into Primus. Conversely, the Decepticons from time to time tend to worship, or venerate might be a better word, not militarism, but like a warrior spirit. They worship the battle, but that's sort of an old thing that hasn't really popped up in a long while. There is a Techno Genesis, which is a belief that is sometimes the truth in some universes, and sometimes a Techno Genesis is somehow part of the primal myth, but a Techno Genesis is like a coming out of nothing, really. These robotic lives coming out of nothing. Zal, which is spelled with an X, is also a term that's thrown out there that suggests that Zal is a sort of a religion, but Zal hasn't really been developed in Transformers lore, besides people swearing by his name, really. Transformer religions definitely will deserve their own video in the future. Victor Lawrence asks on my 150 subs video, oh boy, that's an old video, are the Transformers in the same universe as Voltron because they have the prison on Garrus 9 and Voltron has Galaxy Garrison Alliance? So are they part of the same universe? Please explain. Well, Garrison is a word. Like it's an actual word. It's not just... Garrus 9 is the prison in Transformers lore. Assuming this is spelled correctly, I don't really know Voltron. Galaxy Garrison Alliance refers to a garrison. Garrison is just a word. No, they are not in the same universe. Victor Lawrence again on my Transformers lore podcast, Burning Bridges Beast Wars Uprising, who was Shockwave known as before becoming the Shockwave we know today. And I assume this is about Shockwave from Beast Wars Uprising, since it's on a Beast Wars Uprising video, and we don't really know that much about Shockwave from Beast Wars Uprising. So we know very little about Shockwave. We can assume he's about what you'd expect from a Shockwave. We don't really know anything. However, I think he might be talking about like IDW Shockwave, because that's like one of the few Shockwaves that have that this sentence could apply to and make sense as to why it would be asked. In which case, look at my Transformers lore Shadow Play video, in which I answer that question as we talk about the origin of Shockwave there. TGDM asks on my This is the Best Transformers story, which if you guys don't know, that's a Transformers lore video about Last End of the Wreckers. So if you haven't clicked that video, haven't watched it yet, go ahead. That's my Transformers lore Last End of the Wreckers video. According to IDW, a headshot or decapitation is less a mortal wound and more of an inconvenience to a Transformer, and I am completely okay with it. All hail Megatron. This isn't a question, but like the first question, I have to bring it up because it's wrong. Decapitation is not necessarily a mortal wound, that's true. It does disconnect the head from the spark, in which case that head's going to die eventually, but Transformer decapitation has been a non-fatal thing for a while now, going as far back as the 80s with Optimus Prime's head, as long as it's hooked up to a life support system. Runabouts... Was it Runabout or Runamuck? Okay, it was Runamuck. Runamuck's head got knocked off and he was sentient for a little bit, but then he quickly got killed by a rock smashing him. But IDW makes it very clear that if you lose your brain module, you're dead. So headshots are not only are fatal wounds in IDW, they're especially a fatal wound in IDW. They go all their way to specify that yes, a headshot is a fatal wound. So and he's commenting this on a video where a Rotor Storm gets shot through the face. So I'm not sure where he has this conception that a headshot is an inconvenience when that's not the case. Maybe he's thinking of Rung, but that headshot just didn't hit the brain module. The same goes for any living being that's shot to the head and you don't hit the brain, then they are only major. It's not necessarily a fatal wound. On the Transformers Lore Aligned continuity timeline, William Bullen says, wait, so what happened to the rest of the Cybertronians on the Ark and Nemesis? That's a good question. We don't know. During the trilogy of novels, different bots go their own way, from the Ark, at least. But yeah, frankly, besides the novels, we don't know what happened, but it seems that the Ark isn't on Earth by the time Transformers Prime happened, so the Ark might have gone off, leaving Optimus Prime's crew behind. But yeah, we just don't know, and unless you think Rescue Bots Academy is going to answer it at some point, we will never know. Indy Warp asks, on the Transformers/Evangelion crossover, was Galvatron Megatron before Galvatron in this universe? And really, we only have Starscream mentioning Galvatron. Frankly, we don't know if that Starscream, the ghost of Starscream that came into that storyline, is even the Starscream native to that universe. It could very well have been a multiversal jumping Starscream. We just have no idea anything about Starscream, and therefore we can't really say anything concrete about Galvatron. But basing off the fact that it's heavily based off of the cartoon universe, and even the Marvel UK universe, if you want to debate that, the Starscream was killed by Galvatron. That likely happened during the Unicron War, and that would have been the same line where Megatron became Galvatron. So it's likely, but we don't know. On way back on my Transformers Lore Marvel US Part 1 beginnings, Billy Brigman says, so I'm reading through the old Marvel comics, or well, the wiki short versions anyway, and I'm seeing where they loosely flesh out the political landscape of city-states. Shockwave is from Voss, Megatron is from Kaon, or was it Tarn? And over the course, Straxus of Darkmount, High Lord of Polyhex, this raises a question: how many other leaders have been noted in the lore of the Transformers, and which areas do they reign? Well, first I want to clear up, Shockwave was the ruler of Tarn. I don't believe Megatron was a leader of any city-state, and Starscream was the leader of Voss. And Iacon's part of the whole city-state combat stuff, but Iacon is really more of a led by the Autobots in general. But that's really all who's covered by the city-state. Shockwave controlling Tarn, Starscream in charge of Voss. Megatron didn't lead a city-state, but he is from Tarn. The Evangelion video again, Callum Crane asks, wait, where was Shinji? Did he die in one of the attacks? Was it a day before his father called him? Where the heck is the main boy? The answer is we don't know. No information is out about Shinji Ikari's whereabouts in the Evangelion Transformers universe. And that looks like the last question I have. So, if you have any questions about the Transformers lore, leave your questions in the comments below, and maybe I'll get to that in the next episode of Transformers More Lore. Consider supporting me on Patreon if you want to see my channel continue. Check out all my social media links in the description, and have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and subscribe. Huge thanks to our patrons, including this month's $10 plus patron, Josh Adkins. Check out the description for more patrons and more info about how you can receive a shout out here.